Welcome back, guys. Welcome back to my channel Biology Basics. In today's video, we are going to talk about fat, fatty acid, glycerol. Okay, so let's proceed further and discuss what are they. Okay, so when we just talk about the fat, so what is fat? Simply, a fat is a molecule or a compound which is soluble, which is soluble in the organic solvent, just like alcohol, or you can simply say fat is a molecule which is soluble in the organic solvent but insoluble in what? Water. But insoluble in water. Another definition of fat is basically these are the esters of what? These are the esters of fatty acid. These are the esters of the fatty acid. Fat is made up of two things, that is the glycerol and fatty acid. What is glycerol? Simply a kind of a structure. Yeah, this is the glycerol. Glycerol. And what is fatty acid? This is the fatty acid. Simply a long carbon chain. At one end, you have the carboxylic acid or the carboxylic group, and the rest of the what position is being filled by the hydrogen. All right. So when we have a fat, and we classify the fat basically into two categories. The one is the saturated fatty acid. Another category is the unsaturated fatty acid. So in front of you, you can see the image of the saturated fatty acid, and this is the unsaturated fatty acid. How do we how do we differentiate between them? Simply, the saturated fatty acid is simply what a long chain, and what simply there is what in that chain you will find only single bond. Means if you have the long carbon chain, right, and there is no double bond in that long chain of the fatty acid, that fatty acid is basically your what? Saturated fatty acid. Okay, so only single what bond only single bond what between the carbon of the fatty acid. Okay. And in the unsaturated one, you can simply say you can simply see in this what you have one double bond between the two carbon, right? So those unsaturated fatty acid in which you have the one double bond between the two carbon is known as what? Mono unsaturated fatty acid. And if you have more than one double bond between the two carbon in this unsaturated fatty acid, that can be termed as what? Polyunsaturated fatty acid. All right. Okay, let's proceed further. So this is the image of the glycerol, in which you can simply remember the structure like this. So you have the what? 3 carbon. All right. At one side, you are going to write the OH, OH, OH. All right. And rest of the position, you will have the H. Okay. So how many this carbon forms a bond? One bond, two bond, three bond, right? So one bond is left, so this is going to be H, one more H, right? Now this carbon, how many bond this carbon will form? Obviously four. So one, two, three, and one left. That is going to be H. So how many carbon? Again four. So one, two, and then three, then four. So this is simply the structure of the glycerol that you can easily remember in this way. Now this is simply a chain of what? Fatty acid. This is the chain of the fatty acid. So fatty acid simply it could be much more longer than this, but what you have to remember that at one side you have the carboxylic group, and rest of this place is being filled by the hydrogen. All right, and when we just talk about the saturated fatty acid, SFA, that is saturated fatty acid, and the fatty acid, unsaturated fatty acid, it is very important to understand that the unsaturated fatty acid is basically harmful for us. Right? Although if you compare about the saturated and the unsaturated fatty acid, the only difference is between the only single bond, but here you will find the double bond in between the fatty acid chain. But saturated one having the single bond is harmful, and the unsaturated one which got the double bond, it could be 1, 2, 3, or maybe more than that. This is what comparatively it is what? Less harmful. It's better. It's less harmful, or you can simply say it's better. It's better. Okay. All right. So in this image, you can simply see this is your glycerol, right? This is your glycerol, and this is one fatty acid chain. One fatty acid chain. Okay. So here the one fatty acid chain, and you have the OH. So what is going to happen? The OH from this and one H is from this. So they are going to what form? They are going to what form? They are going to remove as what water, and there will be what ester linkage. So they are going to be what linked together. Okay, so this after the linkage of this, it will be termed as what monosaturated, or sorry, not monosaturated. It is going to be known as what uh, mono monoglyceride. Monoglyceride. Whereas here, if you see, in this case, there is one fatty acid is linked with this one OH of the glycerol. Now there is another fatty acid. So this is the second fatty acid which is going to be linked with the two OH of this glycerol. This will be termed as what? This structure will be termed as what? Here, when one fatty acid linked with the one OH of the glycerol, it is known as what? Monoglyceride. Now it will be known as what? Diglyceride. Okay. Now if you have another, I mean the third fatty acid, it is going to be linked with the third OH of the glycerol. This is termed as what? Triglyceride. This is known as what? Triglyceride. Okay. So in monoglyceride, what is going to what is there? You have the one fatty acid linked with the one OH of the glycerol. In diglyceride, one fatty acid means two fatty acid. This is the one, and this is the second fatty acid linked with the OH. And in the triglyceride, you have the three fatty acid linked with the three OH of the glycerol. I hope this thing is clear, right? Now, okay, uh, there is a difference. There is a difference between the what cis and trans fat. Okay, so just before coming to the cis and trans fat, I hope you are familiar with the saturated fatty acid and then the unsaturated fatty acid. Okay, so in saturated, you have the single carbon carbon bond in the chain, but in the unsaturated fatty acid, you could be have the what one or maybe more than that carbon carbon bond, double bond, right? Okay, so in this image, you can simply say cis fatty acid, and you can simply say the trans fatty acid. Okay, so what is the difference between the cis and trans? Okay, so just see this. Look at here. You have one one double bond between the two carbon, and if the H, both the H are on the same side, this is known as what? Cis fatty acid. Cis fatty acid. All right. And in the trans one, if you can see, you have the what? One double bond between the two carbon, and the one hydrogen and the another one. It is what? Quite just reverse. One is above, and the another is what? Downward. So this is what? Your trans fatty acid. And if I just talk about this trans fatty acid, this is extremely harmful. This is extremely harmful. So if you buy some kind of a snack, and at the back of it, if you see this consists of the trans fat, please avoid it, because this trans fat is naturally do not found in the nature. I mean, in nature, it is not found in the nature. It is made. I mean, it is formed by some kind of a reaction. So, if the nature, if this thing is not found in the nature, means nature do not have the any specific enzyme for this. So, this thing is going to be what accumulated inside your body, and it is going to what it is going to give you a very bad impact on your health. All right. Okay. So this this thing is here. So cis fatty acid got the what two hydrogen. I mean, these hydrogen are on the same side, but here the hydrogen are on the opposite one. All right, and this is the a trans fatty acid, where as you can see, this is what one hydrogen, another hydrogen. This is another. Again, you have this change. This see the position of the hydrogen. So position of hydrogen is quite important in the trans fatty acid. All right. Okay. So trans. If I just talk about the trans fat will not be able to bend because of this. And so because of this, as this side hydrogen, it is not going to be bend, and this creates a problem. This creates a problem. What kind of a problem do we get? Obviously, if this is bending is not seen, right? I mean, this is bending not seen. If you just talk about the saturated one, you have simply the chain like this, but the saturated one is harmful. Saturated fatty acid is harmful. But if you just talk about the unsaturated one, where you have the chain like this, okay, let me just add a COH group. So if you have a chain like this, okay, so at one side, if this is the H, and another side, if this is the H, so this is the cis is better one. But if you just talk about the COH and then H and double bond CH like this, okay, so this one is the trans one, and trans one is, I mean, it is more dangerous than the saturated one, because your body do not have any specific enzyme for this, right? So that's why it gets accumulated inside the body, and it basically forms what, I mean, various kind of a heart related disorder, or it basically impact your blood a blood related problem, like it got accumulated in the blood vessels and hampers your blood flow. And okay, so fine. So let's talk about the difference between the fat and oil. Difference between fat and oil. If I just talk about the fat, it is solid at room temperature. So you can simply remember, or you can simply recall the like the products like the ghee, they are generally solid at the room temperature. But if you just talk about the oil is generally liquid at the room temperature. So that the sarso oil and all, you can simply imagine in this way. Okay, fat. The second point in the fat is what? Saturated and trans are its type. So I told you that the saturated and the trans are extremely dangerous, but among this saturated and trans is more dangerous than the saturated one. Okay, so saturated and trans are the example of the fats, whereas the unsaturated fats like the monounsaturated fatty acid and then the polyunsaturated fatty acids are the example of the oils, because it is what? It's liquid. It's liquid at the room temperature. Okay, so these fats, the saturated and the trans one, especially the saturated one, these are derived from the animals. The fats and the oil, if we just talk about, these are derived from the plant. So that's why this is the good one. And these fats are basically increase the cholesterol level. So if I just talk about the specifically the low this LDL kind of a cholesterol is basically increased in this way, whereas it improves the cholesterol level by increase the production of the HDL. Okay, HDL kind of a cholesterol is being synthesized. So this is better cholesterol, or this is known as what? A good cholesterol if we compare with the LDL, which is what? The bad cholesterol. Okay, so if I just talk about the fats mainly it come from the animal food, but also through the vegetable oil by processing called non-hydrogenation. So yeah, in the hydrogenation, by the process of what? Hydrogenation, you got the trans fats and all. Okay, and the oils mainly come from the plants or the fishes. So fishes is basically a good source of what? Omega fatty acids, and it's what? It's very good source. You should take in the diet. Okay, so the example of the fats are what? Butter and the beef fat, and whereas the example of the oil is the vegetable oil and fish oil. Okay, so I hope you have understood the difference between the glycerol, fatty fats and the fatty acid. And if you have anything, is there anything in your mind you want to know, or if you have any doubt related to this subject, you can just comment. Okay, so thank you.